we've been talking about this for the entire program. Disturbing revelations this week, or accusations, I guess I should say, that and some of which is substantiated by a picture, that Al Franken in 2006 on a USO trip with a fellow performer had, in the course of supposedly rehearsing for a sketch they were doing, is accused of kissing and groping Leanne Tweeden during this, I guess, USO tour. And then subsequent to that, on their way home, Al Franken mimed, I guess, squeezing her breasts on the plane, and was photographed, posing for a photograph, a supposedly funny photograph, on the way back. Now, he issued apology. He said the photograph was in really bad taste. It was not funny. He said he doesn't remember the rehearsal the way that Leanne does, but he has called for an ethics investigation on himself. And, this is where we are. It's a very difficult moment. Full disclosure, I worked with Al Franken at Air America. I consider him a friend. I'm not in regular contact with him now, obviously. Occasionally I will interview him or see him. I don't know. I never saw that behavior or know anybody who expressed that behavior to me. But, frankly, I think folks in my situation would be the last to know about it. So, one doesn't know. But, there's a lot of questions about these accusations, but I think the default is that we should take them seriously and believe them enough, at least, so that there's some accounting for it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't look. Anybody who's halfway sentient at the moment understands that we're in a midst of a cultural upheaval in dealing with this stuff, and nobody, no matter how good a politician they are or how much we might like them on the basis of their politics, or anything else, actually, but in this specific case, you can't ignore what that picture shows, which is it shows a juvenile, humiliating, and inappropriate sort of gesture that was photographed. And by the way, it was photographed and passed out to everybody who'd been on the tour. I mean, it wasn't just some private thing. I mean, this was something everybody was laughing at, and that's the kind of thing that women are frankly sick of in the workplace. They just are. And Franken handled it as well as I think anybody can in that situation. He did, he admitted that he was wrong. He apologized and asked for an investigation. Mitch McConnell, raced forward to demand an investigation. Frankly, I will not be surprised if Al Franken is out of the Senate before too long. There's a Democratic governor there. He will probably be replaced by someone who is fine, and this may be the end of his career, and that's just the way these things go at this point. Now, having said that, let me just point out something else, which is that we have a man sitting in the office in the White House right now who was accused by nearly 20 women of exactly the same behavior that Al Franken was accused of, not accused by more than one person, and he was caught on tape bragging about it, and he won. 63 million plus people voted for him anyway. So I have a certain amount. I'm withholding judgment on whether or not this cultural revolution that we're undergoing runs as deeply, at least in part of the country, as it does in the other. And we'll have to see what happens here. But the defenses of Roy Moore, the fact that the president himself is accused of this behavior and basically people blew it off, I think that is part of the story that hasn't been adequately explored as yet, and I have to wonder whether or not the fact that Donald Trump was running against the first woman nominee, it's one thing, women can be victims. We're allowed to say, oh, look what this horrible man did to me. I'm not quite so sure that we're at a point yet where women are allowed to challenge men directly for power. So we'll see what, maybe this is just a step in that direction, but I don't think we're there yet.
And, what fascinates me too about this moment is there is a quality of, we can't hold Donald Trump to account. He was not held to account. And on some level, it is as if a society is basically saying that all these other people, I don't mean this in a way to diminish. Obviously, this accounting and reckoning is long overdue, and it may not be as widely, like you say, adopted as within the country as we might like. But there is a feeling of like, we can't hold him to account. So we're going to make sure that we clean up as many of these messes and hold as many people as we can to account to further, diminish this dynamic in society. Obviously, it's not going to go away, and this is still going to be a problem. But one hopes. And I think, that's the point, is that it's not just about holding these people account. It's about basically making sure that people going forward in society don't behave this way and subjugate women in this way.
Well, I have no doubt that this is going to change behavior. I mean, do you? I think that all people in power, men especially, but I suppose women too, if they're in that position, you have to think about your behavior in a way that you didn't. The same thing happened after the Anita Hill hearings. I mean, I was working then, and there was a big, a national conversation that happened around that, and it wasn't nearly as, as thorough as this is. And it did change behavior to a certain extent that certainly created some sort of, legal outlines for companies to use and things like that. And I'm sure that this is going to go a lot farther. But I also think, and I'm pretty sure, that if anybody is expecting that this particular thing will lead to women's equality, I think they're probably going to find out that this is actually going to inhibit that growth. Because the reason I say that is that there will be a backlash. Men are still in power in this country, and I think that it will. The example of Donald Trump and the fact that he was able to overcome this while bragging about it openly. And people were unable to sort of, when the election was decided, it was decided that Hillary Clinton lost because she hadn't coddled certain white men well enough in the face of all of that. I just, when I look at the big sort of picture here, I'm seeing it as being perhaps a bit more complex than just the idea that, women are finally coming into their own. Don't get me wrong, it has to happen. But we're a long way from women's equality. Let's just put it that way.
All right, we got to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk about Donald Trump's vacation overseas, or I guess we should say really his travel, wherein by all expert accounts, he was taken to the cleaners. But of course, he came back triumphantly. We will talk about that and more. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio. We're talking to the great Heather Parton, or you may know her as Digby.